Learning English podcast.
Okay, so have you ever felt that, like, you have all these amazing plans, these big dreams, right?
Yeah.
Like learning a new skill or finally starting that project you've been putting off.
Or just like taking better care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Just getting healthier, more organized, or whatever it is. But then when it actually comes to like taking that first step, it feels
impossible.
it's like wading through mud or something. Yeah, it's that feeling of being ambitious, but then also kind of lazy, right?
It is, yeah. And it's super common too. It's this weird paradox where we have all these big goals and aspirations, but then actually putting in the work consistently just feels so hard.
It does. And that's actually exactly what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
We've been looking at this fascinating discussion about this whole idea of being ambitious but lazy.
Right. And we want to really dig into like, why does this happen to so many of us?
And even more importantly, how do we actually break free from that cycle?
Yeah, because it doesn't matter if you're trying to learn a new language like they talk about in this discussion or you're working on something completely different. The same principles apply.
Totally. So the source we're looking at today basically explores this tension that a lot of people feel between wanting to achieve great things, but then also kind of struggling to actually do the work.
Yeah, it's like this internal battle between your dreams and your actions. And the source suggests some really interesting potential solutions and ways to change your mindset.
So our goal today is to like unpack all that for you guys so
Yeah.
you can actually start making progress on your goals, even if you sometimes feel like you're stuck in that ambitious but lazy zone.
Right, and maybe even see that laziness as something that can be changed or overcome.
Okay, so first things first, let's define what we actually mean by ambitious but lazy. What does that actually look like in real life?
Well, I think the ambitious part is pretty straightforward. You have these strong desires, you want to achieve things, you have big dreams for yourself.
You can see the finish line in your mind.
Yeah, but then there's that lazy element, which is a bit more complex. I don't think it always means that someone is inherently lazy or doesn't want to work hard.
Right, it's not about being like a couch potato all the time.
Yeah, more often it's about lacking the consistent motivation or the energy to really follow through on those ambitious plans.
It's that gap between knowing what you want and actually doing it regularly.
Exactly, and in the source they give some really relatable examples, like you might dream of speaking a new language fluently, but you struggle to make time to study, or
You might want to be super healthy and fit, but then you end up skipping workouts,
or you might have these big career goals, but then you're not really taking any concrete steps to get there.
And what makes this so frustrating is that deep down, you probably know you're capable of achieving those things.
You have the potential, but something is holding you back.
Yeah, it's like you're your own worst enemy sometimes.
It is so, why does this happen? Why do so many of us get stuck in this cycle of ambition and then inaction?
The source material points to a few different reasons, and honestly, they're all pretty relatable.
Yeah, one big one is information overload, right? We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, advice, tips, strategies. It's just endless.
It's like drinking from a fire hose of information.
And ironically, all that information can actually lead to paralysis because you get so overwhelmed by all the options and all the advice that you just end up doing nothing.
Your brain just shuts down.
Yeah, it's too much to process, so you avoid making any decisions at all.
I feel that it's like analysis paralysis.
Another really common reason is fear of failure. You know, if you don't even try, you can't fail, right?
So laziness almost becomes like a shield protecting you from disappointment.
Exactly. It's a way to avoid putting yourself out there and risking criticism or judgment.
And then there's perfectionism, which is kind of related to that, that all or nothing thinking,
Like, if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all.
which of course ends up with you not doing anything because nothing's ever perfect.
And sometimes it's not even about fear or perfectionism. It's just that you genuinely lack the energy or motivation to do anything.
And that could be a sign of burnout exhaustion or even underlying mental health issues.
It's important to remember that we're not robots. We can't always be on. And productive sometimes, what looks like laziness is actually just a sign that you need to rest and recharge.
Right. Self-care is important. And finally, the source points out that sometimes we just don't have a clear path forward. We know we want, but we don't know how to get there.
You have the destination, but you're missing the map.
Exactly. So like you might want to learn a new language, but you don't even know where to start, what resources to use, what method to follow.
And without that clear roadmap, taking action just feels overwhelming and impossible.
Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of what causes this feeling of being ambitious but lazy, let's talk about what we can actually do about it.
Right, because knowing the problem is only half the battle.
One of the first things the source suggests is to change the way you talk to yourself, which sounds super simple, but I think it can be really powerful.
It is. Language is so important. Instead of calling yourself lazy, which is just a negative label that makes you feel bad about yourself, try using more descriptive and compassionate language.
Like what kind of language?
Instead of saying, I'm so lazy, you could say, I'm feeling unmotivated right now, or I'm overwhelmed by everything I need to do, or even, I'm not sure where to start, but I'm willing to figure it out.
It's like taking the judgment out of it.
Exactly, because when you constantly call yourself lazy, you start to believe it and it becomes part of your identity. But when you use more neutral language, you create space for understanding and change.
It's like you're acknowledging the feeling without making it a permanent part of who you are.
And that opens up the possibility for growth and improvement.
So instead of being a lazy person, you become someone who is working on their motivation, or someone who is learning to overcome procrastination.
And that subtle shift in perspective can make a huge difference in how you approach your goals.
Another really practical strategy the source talks about is building tiny habits. It's basically about breaking down those huge, overwhelming goals into small, manageable actions.
Because it's so easy to get discouraged when you're only focused on the end result, which can feel so far away and unattainable.
It's like trying to climb a mountain in one giant leap.
But if you focus on taking one small step at a time, it suddenly feels much more doable.
So instead of saying, I want to speak fluent Spanish, you might say, I'm going to spend 10 minutes every day listening to Spanish podcasts.
Or I'm going to learn 5 new Spanish words every morning.
And those tiny actions might seem insignificant on their own, but over time they really add up.
And they also help you build a sense of momentum and consistency.
Which is key. Because once you start taking action, even small actions, motivation tends to follow.
And as you build those tiny habits into your routine, you slowly start to see yourself as someone who takes action, someone who follows through, someone who is capable of achieving their goals.
The source also talks about creating what they call a lazy-proof environment, which is basically about setting up your surroundings in a way that supports your goals and minimizes distractions.
It's about acknowledging that our environment has a huge impact on our behavior.
Like if you're trying to work on your computer and your phone is right next to you buzzing with notifications, it's going to be super hard to resist the urge to check it.
And that constant distraction is going to drain your energy and make it even harder to focus on your actual work.
So creating a lazy-proof environment might involve things like putting your phone in another room, or turning off notifications,
Or setting up a dedicated workspace that's free from clutter and distractions.
or even something as simple as putting a bottle of water and a healthy snack on your desk so you don't have to get up every 5 minutes to get something.
It's about making the desired behavior the easiest option.
And making those undesirable behaviors like checking your phone or snacking on junk food more difficult.
And the source also mentions using visual cues to keep yourself motivated, like putting up sticky notes with affirmations or pictures of your goals.
To remind yourself of what you're working towards.
And then there's the 5-second rule, which is a really interesting technique.
I've heard of that. Tell me more.
It's basically about interrupting that moment of hesitation when you're thinking about doing something you know you should do, but you're resisting it.
Like when you know you should go for a run, but you're just sitting on the couch scrolling through your phone.
So the idea is that when you have that impulse to take action, you count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you just do it before your brain has a chance to talk you out of it.
So it's like tricking your brain into taking action.
Yeah, it's about bypassing those mental roadblocks and just getting started.
That's cool. I'm going to try that.
Another really important point the source makes is about celebrating small victories.
Yeah, we often wait until we've achieved something big to celebrate.
Yeah.
But that can be a long time coming.
And in the meantime, we're not giving ourselves any positive reinforcement.
So the idea is to acknowledge and reward yourself for even the smallest steps forward.
Like if you manage to study for 10 minutes, even though you really didn't feel like it, give yourself a mental high five. Or
If you choose to go for a walk instead of watching TV, acknowledge that as a win.
it might seem silly, but those little celebrations help to reinforce the positive behavior and make you more likely to repeat it in the future.
Because your brain starts associating those actions with positive feelings.
And then over time, those small wins add up to big results.
Yeah, the source also talks about the importance of self-compassion, which I think is something we all need to hear more of.
Yeah, it's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a friend who is struggling.
Because we're often way harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else.
So if you're feeling unmotivated or discouraged, try to talk to yourself in a supportive and encouraging way.
Like you would to a good friend.
Yeah, instead of beating yourself up, say things like, It's okay to have a bad day, everyone goes through this, or I'm proud of myself for trying even if I didn't succeed this time.
Because being kind to yourself actually makes it easier to make progress.
It reduces stress and builds resilience.
And then this next point is kind of mind-blowing, but the source says that you don't actually need to feel motivated to take action.
That's right, motivation often follows action, not the other way around.
So you don't have to wait until you're in the perfect mood or you have a burst of inspiration to start working towards your goals.
Just start even if it's just a tiny step.
Because that initial action can actually create motivation.
It's like priming the pump. Once you get started, it becomes easier to keep going.
And finally, the source talks about the power of rewriting your narratives.
The stories we tell ourselves about our habits and capabilities.
Yeah, because we all have these internal scripts running in our heads like, I'm not good at following through, or I'm just a lazy person, or...
Other people are naturally more disciplined than me.
And those stories can really hold us back.
They become self-fulfilling prophecies.
So the idea is to consciously identify those negative narratives and start replacing them with more positive and empowering ones.
Like instead of saying, I always procrastinate, you could say, I'm learning to manage my time more effectively, or...
Instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you could say, I'm willing to put in the effort to get better.
It's about shifting your mindset from fixed to growth.
From believing that your abilities are set in stone to believing that you can always learn and improve.
And every time you take action, even a small action, you're proving those positive narratives to be true.
So to sum it all up, feeling ambitious but lazy is a totally normal human experience.
It doesn't mean you're a failure or you're not capable of achieving great things.
It just means you might need to adjust your approach and your mindset.
And the good news is that there are tons of practical strategies you can use to overcome those feelings of inertia and start making progress towards your goals.
So the next time you're feeling stuck, remember that you don't have to wait for motivation to strike. Just take one small step.
And then another, and another.
And before you know it, you'll be well on your way to achieving those big, ambitious dreams.
And just to give you guys a concrete challenge as you're listening to this, think about one tiny habit you can implement today to get you moving in the right direction.
Yeah, maybe it's speaking one sentence in your target language, or learning one new word, or writing down one goal.
It doesn't matter how small it is, just do something.
Because those small actions really do add up to big results.
And remember, be kind to yourself along the way.
You've got this.